What might become possible when instead of focusing on what we think needs to be fixed, either in ourselves or someone else, we create the kind of space where people can be surprised by what they can do? Hello, and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast for leaders and people curious about creating a more fulfilling work life. I'm your host, Susan Ní Chríodáin, and I help people in leadership make sense of themselves and their work life, especially in times of uncertainty, transition, and difficulty. I'm also the author of the award-winning book, Leading Beyond the Numbers. And I love real conversations, the ones that invite you to truly listen, that create space for reflection, to be heard and to feel understood. Together with leaders and fellow explorers, we shine a light on what shapes our work lives, both from the outside and the inside. Join us for stories, insights and perspectives that keep humanity at the heart of work. Today, I am delighted to welcome Mike Porteous to Life Beyond the Numbers. Mike, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much. I feel very honoured to be here. Thank you.
That's nice to hear. And this is my first recording of 2026. So let's see what this year brings. And one of the things I like to think about listeners is I imagine that when I'm in conversation with somebody, like Mike and I will be today, that maybe you're someone who's sitting beside us in a restaurant or a cafe, you overhear us, and you just want to keep listening in.
Mm.
But something I've been thinking about, Mike, is how do we want our listeners to feel at the end of this episode? Because that's another dimension. It's not just that they listen in, but what's the feeling we'd like to evoke?
Wow, this is quite a deep question, and I'm going to ask. It might sound like I'm evading it, dodging it at first, because I kind of think it would be a bit presumptuous of me to say, "Oh, I can affect how someone feels or thinks or what they take." But putting that aside, I'll say a bit about the work I do, and then what I want when I'm in a conversation or taking part in a webinar or listening to a podcast, whatever that might take us. So the work I do, I'm a sports coach, an endurance sports coach, and I place a big emphasis on feeling, how I'm feeling as a coach when I'm stood there with someone or with a group of people, how I can create a space where I just feel like the coaching is going to flow, right? How they come to trust in the relationship, hopefully, as well as how can I help them feel at their very best, that they're most excited and ready for whatever hairy, scary challenge they've come to me for support for. So I put a big emphasis on a kind of layered level of feeling. But again, there's something to avoid. I can't, just by telling someone, "Oh, this is how you should feel confident." And my work is all around confidence. And sometimes the way that gets talked about and thought about can be rather judgmental, I think. You really should be confident. Why aren't you? This is something to fix. Say to yourself the following, rather than my approach is sort of trying to get at, well, what's the underlying feeling there that I want this person to get really attuned to? And if I can coach in a way where someone is really attuned to what's happening in their mind and body as one, not as two separate things, then I think, well, I found it's just magical, the effect that people have. They would kind of find themselves at their best. They go on to do things where the phrase I like to use is they're surprised by what they can do. That's a bit of a rambling thing about how I think of it in relation to my work with athletes and what I'm hoping them to feel. It's more how I'm hoping them they can be really attuned to what's going on for them, and for me to be attuned to what's happening for me as well as what's happening for them. And then the second bit, I suppose, thinking about a conversation that I'm listening into on a podcast or if I'm taking part in a webinar, I don't necessarily want to come out with a kind of a to-do list. Oh, I really should improve on this and that, and I must practice this. And of course, a lot of the stuff that's out there, it kind of races us down that route. So what are you going to do differently, Mike? See? But actually, I want to come away with a sense of almost a sort of stillness where I can just quietly think through for myself, well, what have I got from that? How does it change my thinking? How do I want to be? Something about a calmness and a composure where you can be open to just thinking in a different way or seeing yourself in a different kind of place. Yeah. So maybe that's what some of your listeners will get to. I don't know, but I can't presume that they would.
I think it's helped me already, though, because it's also the interaction between us, isn't it? And there's the questioner and the answerer, let's say. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, there's two people here, you and I, having a conversation, and there's this space between us.
Yeah.
And what you said there reminds me that if I bring a frenetic energy into a conversation like this, it'll go in one direction. But by bringing more of a calm and composed stillness, I'm attuning and
Yeah.
we're attuning, and that will result in a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And similarly, if I can take that kind of openness to an encounter with someone I'm coaching, so I don't go in thinking to myself, oh, these are the things that they must do. These are the things that we must fix. If I can go in with more of an openness, yeah, it just seems I end up feeling much more rewarded. I end up feeling much more like I'm being true to myself. Hopefully, the person I'm coaching also has a sense of, oh, yeah, someone's listening here. Someone's seeing me for who I am and is there to help me rather than instructing, and which always implicitly has an element of, oh, you're doing it wrong. I'm the holder of what's right. Yeah.
We have a lot of those people in the world, the holders of what is right. So I think that job is full.
Yes. But how tiring it must be for these people to feel like you know exactly what's needed here. My goodness, that must be tiring. That's a weight to carry.
I think it is because I think, look, I don't know because, well, I think for a while I was probably a bit like that, where I'm doing it the right way.
Yeah.
So you need to come with me. And then you realize that you've lost everybody somewhere along the line. So I do think I adapted that. And I think there are certain things like when you are doing, say, financial statements, which is where I would have spent my time. There's a grimace from Mike. There is a right way to get things to balance. Numbers require precision and
Mm.
specificity, but that doesn't lend itself well to everybody, I think, has their own specificity or precision, and it's our jobs to tune into that and
Yeah.
not make them tune into our way,
Mm.
which is not necessarily the right way, because there is no right way. Surprise. So, Mike, you've written, as I was saying to you before we started recording, probably my favorite, if not favorite, book of last year. And I was wondering why that was as well. And I suppose it's a bit like what we started talking about, it's the feeling.
Mm.
And you tapped into your words, helped me tap in more to myself and what I think and write about. And you articulated stuff that I haven't yet. And for me, that's the joy of reading or
Mm.
listening, is that someone helps you further the thinking or the conversations or deepen perhaps those things. And your book is called Beyond Belief: The Art of Confidence Centered Coaching. And before we go into confidence centered coaching as such, when you started to write this book, Mike, I mean, it's clear it comes from your experience for sure, but did you know what would come out through this writing?
Yeah. Hmm. No, probably not. No. And it came about in an odd way, I suppose. It came about by a professor wagging his finger at me. Stephen Rolnick, who is one of the co-founders or creators of motivational interviewing. I got to know him, and he was reading some of the blog posts I write. And then he wagged his finger and said, "You've got to get this stuff down in a book," which gave a really nice impetus. In one sense, he was pushing at an open door. I had been thinking about it, but not in a sense of, oh, this will make me famous, or even that the ideas are beautifully formed and they're just ready to go. It felt very much like a process of making real stuff that had been going on in my head for ages. I think the process of writing really, certainly for me, it helps just keep digging down to, yeah, but what is it that's really going on here? What do I want to say? Without even getting to the point of the next question, I suppose, of, well, how do I share that with other people? How might they receive this? Yeah, so I don't think I had a neatly mapped out path. And people kept telling me, you don't write a book. First, you need to get in touch with a publisher and give them a proposal, and then off you go. And I'd finished writing by the time I started looking for a publisher. But I just knew that, or my sense was, I was very, very unlikely to find any publisher, certainly not in the sports world, who would have an interest. I felt like if I just have to get it down on paper and present it almost, that someone somewhere would say, "Ah, yeah, no, we'll go with this." And that actually was my experience with Alison Jones at Practical Inspiration Publishing. I tried approaching lots of different publishers, got nowhere, got turned off by several by what they asked for, realizing I didn't know how to make the case. Alison at first said, "Oh, nice idea, but it's not for us." And it was only when she actually read a manuscript that, fortunately, she said, "No, no, we'd really like to publish this." Yeah.
Again, no right way. So everyone told you, oh, you can't do this and you should do that, and yet you followed your own, you stayed true to yourself. And how like those voices in your head, for example, or those people telling you, the experts, steering your own course requires belief, self-belief,
Yeah,
self-confidence, whatever. How did you grapple with that, Mike? Or did it
right,
even become an issue?
right. I don't think it was so much my own self-belief. It was more, I'm just so convinced to the point of obsession that the way in which we're taught to be sports coaches, it's just so limited. And the people we look to as the pinnacle of coaches, I mean, sure, there's some super impressive people, but that's not the model. I've continued to feel really deeply there's a better way of being a coach. And it starts with just that very word of the being rather than the doing. It's back to the stuff about being really attuned to who I am, what I bring, how can I create a space where both me and the people I'm coaching have an easiness and a fluency about what we're all doing. And that's not the stuff that you're taught in qualifications or training courses. And in the sports where people would talk a lot about the coach's philosophy. But for a lot of people, I think it stays at a rather superficial level, being a bit harsh about it. It's all about the tactics. Oh, our philosophy is press hard or keep going, rather than this is me, that my philosophy comes from who I am and the presence that I want to bring to each encounter.
And that's where I want to go is presence. Because actually, something you write that we feel the absence of
Yeah,
confidence far more than we do the presence. So I'd love to understand that a little bit more, Mike, because I think this relates far beyond sports coaching. And I know that's your specialism, expertise, your work, but I see so many parallels with people in offices
yeah,
or
yeah,
any of us in our normal day-to-day lives.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, basically, the idea is a bit, in some ways, ironic or paradoxical for someone who's writing about confidence-centered coaching. I don't believe there is a thing called confidence if we think of it as a thing that some people have and some don't, or a thing that you build up and gets taken away. I think a far more helpful way of thinking is to, in a sense, to go the layers below to what's really going on for someone. See, and where does it come from? I was thinking about this that many years ago, I used to be quite a good runner, and I would have people come up before a race, very excited. Oh, Mike, you're gonna win this, aren't you? Nowadays, people would say you're going to smash it. So it's as if they're assuming that there's this not just an ability, but there's this, for want of a better word, there's a confidence there for what I'm now going to produce in this race. But they had no idea what was going on for me. And I found it very distancing because I wasn't feeling that. For sure, I was kind of thinking, oh, wow, I might have a chance here. But I was also feeling a deep nervousness. I could feel it in my stomach, in my heart, a coldness right through my body, plus an excitement though as well. Thinking, wow, how lucky am I? I've actually made it to the start line, injury free. Really, when I started trying to delve into the issues more around confidence, I thought that almost as a principle, we have no idea what's going on for someone, no matter even if they might look super confident. They might even say those words, but actually we have no idea what's really going on for them. And again, on a more kind of positive side, if I can orientate my coaching in a way where I help people get to a particular kind of mix of deeper feelings, which can chat through if that's helpful, then it becomes something that belongs in them, and amazing things happen. Yeah.
So that absence you're speaking to is a feeling you have in yourself. And I'm not just saying you, but any of us would have in ourselves, because I used to get told, oh, you look so confident.
Yeah.
And you're like, so what? Like, what's that got to do with anything? Plus, all the other person is doing is projecting their own feelings onto me,
Yeah.
or lack of confidence or something, going, I wish I was like Susan or whatever, for whatever reason. And so it's like judging a book by its cover, isn't it? It's the outward face of us that meets the
Mm.
world, our body, our stance, whatever, and how we feel inside. Is that the absence you're speaking to, Mike?
Maybe. I'm thinking when I wrote about this paradox that I feel the absence but not the presence of confidence, I was thinking maybe at a simpler level, it's more when it's not there, in a sense, wow, do I feel it? It hurts. It's totally undermining. And I probably am going to use the words of such and such, and I lost all my confidence. We'll put it into those clear words. But I don't think the opposite is so true. That when I'm feeling what might be labeled confidence, I'm actually feeling a mix of other things. Because again, confidence is not a thing. Maybe if I run through that?
I think so.
Yeah, so those kind of mix of feelings, there's always three things with me. I can't count beyond three. The first is an excitement, but it's not an excitement like, oh, I've got this made. I'm guaranteed the result I want. That's called arrogance.
Yeah.
That's not confidence. It's the way I express it or think about it is it's an excitement that I experience as a thrilled anticipation. I don't know what's going to happen in this race, but wow, am I excited to be here, to be a part of what's going to unfold. That's the kind of excitement that I want to really seek out and nurture. And when I'm talking with an athlete about them preparing for an event, we'll deliberately spend time thinking about, wow, you've made it to the start line. What's that going to be like? Especially in my sports and endurance sports, a lot of people don't get that far through injury or anyway. So an excitement that experiences thrilled anticipation. And the second kind of part of the mix is to do with control, which is where a lot of the kind of sports psychologists and other people who write about confidence would go, control as in I'm in charge of what's happening. I have agency. People would talk about self-determination theory. My actions will lead to this result. And yeah, there's a big element of that. But I think it has to sit with its opposite, which is uncertainty of not knowing and knowing that I don't know, being able to accept that there's some things that I have no control over whatsoever. I don't know what's going to come up. Again, especially in the stuff that I coach people for, all sorts of random things might happen in a long triathlon or a big river swim. So we have to spend time not only preparing for those things that we know we can control and being really rigorous about those, but at the same time acknowledging that, yeah, stuff is going to happen. And can we find back to, how can I experience something which I think of as a calming composure? And then the third element is all about fluency, that kind of in the moment magic, where your head isn't full of instructions, it just happens. So people would talk about flow, that's a part of it, I think. It just happens, and we kind of lose and find ourselves in the moment. It's the way I like to think of it. And again, I think we can coach around those things. It goes back to the thing about how attuned someone can be to what's happening, to the effort that they're making, or the position that they're in the water or on the bike or whatever. And that's that lovely sense of a fluid movement. If we can really work on that, as opposed to what I, as an expert coach, think is technically the perfect swim stroke or sitting on the bike position or whatever. If I can help someone get to that point where, again, they have that kind of losing and finding themselves. Wow, that makes it so enjoyable, as well as leading to amazing results.
And as you're speaking to all of those, I'm putting myself in my CrossFit gym that I go to a couple of times a week, or well, as often as I can. And yesterday I was there, I was rowing on the rowing machine. And like that, when I would say at one with
Yeah,
the machine, even though it's effort, it's also effortless
yeah,
somehow. And I can feel myself come in and out of that state. And it's not guaranteed to feel at one with something because the thinking gets in
yeah,
the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. And something particularly like swimming. Swimming is quite a technical thing to do. So it's very, very easy for for their heads to get totally cluttered up with, oh, my elbow needs to be here, or my hand should be coming in like this, or I'm not breathing right. And the more you get down that route, the less at ease you're going to be in the water. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I find it hard when I'm swimming to do that thing of losing myself in the rhythm, just enjoying a sense of balance and fluidity through the water. But that's why I do it. That's why I keep going because it's such a brilliant experience.
Absolutely. And I relearned to swim when I was in my 20s, mid to late 20s. And I mean, I grew up by the sea, so I was always swimming. And but I never the breathing, and I think that's the other thing. And we haven't spoken about breath so much, but breath is so important to everything we do, not
Mm,
just sport, but life in general. And the swimming, again, the thing I most remember from those classes was if you try to fix everything in one go, you'll forget to breathe.
yeah,
And what that did for me was every time I go into the sea or the pool, the breathing is all I focus on.
yeah,
And then
brilliant.
everything else follows because that's what's important.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah,
So, fixing. And here are 3 things you need to do by the end of this class, so you're going to be the best at. And if you only do these 5 things, going against the flow or the mainstream, it is like swimming upstream against a current. Is it, Mike? I mean, because you are saying things that other people aren't saying. So, how have you come to terms with that yourself?
Mm. Mm. Well, there's more people now actually saying there's a better way of coaching or operating in all sorts of professional areas. And back to Stephen Rolnick, he talks about the fixing reflex. So, yeah, I don't feel I'm kind of on my own there. But I'm very conscious that, again, in the sports world, the standing of a coach, the way they're thought of, people expect that coach to be the fixer, the one with the expert advice. I've got this vision of, I did a swim squad a couple of years ago. I remember one woman in particular, she got so angry with me because I was coaching this particular way. And she was saying to me, but you've got to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I want you to get a video of me swimming and point out to me what I'm doing wrong. And to me aback a little bit. Clearly, at that point, in her view, I really wasn't much of a coach at all because I wasn't providing the obvious answer. And even though I suspected, I knew what wasn't quite, if you like, the area that wasn't quite working for her, I just knew that me saying, oh, it's this, oh, yeah, hands coming in the wrong place, or I can't even remember what it was, or giving her a video and showing it. Actually, that would only take us so far. Back to what I was saying before, she had to feel in her own body and make it hers a sense of what was right for her. And the way to do that, I think, is first being very open. I don't know. The answer is, oh, well, I'm not sure. But let's try various things out. If you're up for this, why don't we try this? So why don't we try changing how your hands come in it, for argument's sake? See? And the person, in this particular case, off she goes, she'd swim 2 lengths, and then look up and say, how did that look? To which, again, not being a very helpful coach, I'm not telling you. Tell me first, how did it feel? Did you feel like you were getting more of a kind of a surge through the water, or holding more, or you felt more relaxed? Or, I can't remember, whatever it was. Tell me how it felt. Unfortunately, most of us, we can be ever so disconnected from our bodies. The body is it's doing something over there, and it needs another external person to come and say, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. But the more I can help people to really connect with what's going on for them and feel it for themselves, then they'll find, with some guidance, but they'll find what's right for them. This might sound a bit smug, but I met this woman about 6 months later, and she said, I got it. I finally got it. I thank you so much, and I'm enjoying my swimming so much. It was a kind of realization that maybe it wasn't the right time and space for her then, but she had to find her own way. And yeah.
The enjoyment is everything, no? I suppose
Yeah.
when like, why do we do anything? If we don't enjoy it, what's it giving us? And we'll become more and more disconnected from who we are if
Yeah.
we're forcing ourselves through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard time people really give themselves a hard time in the very things that you would think we would only be doing because we enjoy it.
And
Yeah.
and that speaks to the knowing in action, I think, that you
Ah,
write about, Mike, that by feeling it, and it's somehow beyond words.
yeah, yeah,
So I think throughout the book, I mean, to me, it's a rebellious book in a way, because
oh,
it's challenging conformity. And I
yeah,
wouldn't say you're out there going, you must not
no, no.
conform because that's a form of conformity. But there's an unconventional wisdom to your words, and beauty and uncertainty are things you talk about a lot. And I do think uncertainty is certainly brought in more to conversations now,
Yeah,
because that control that you talked about isn't there. So we have to
yeah.
have both sides. But beauty, not so much. So where did this love of beauty come from?
Um, where does it come from? I describe it as those moments where we're just captured by something in front of us, or that we're feeling in ourselves, and there's a sense of connecting, and also a sort of a wondering. Wow, how could this thing in front of me, or that I'm feeling, or this music I'm hearing, or wow, where did that come from? I suppose I haven't thought of it this way before, but I kind of think for me, there's something really important about moments where I really feel alive, as opposed to just kind of living openly share. Where that comes from, my wife died coming up 20 years ago, and yeah, all through her illness, and then afterwards, there's a sense you have to keep living. I had children who I didn't look after very well, but I nonetheless have responsibilities, and I have a job, and so you just keep going, you keep living. But there are moments, these magical moments, where you can just feel so alive, with the beauty that's there. How lucky am I to be here doing whatever it is, or to be seeing this, or to be with this person, connecting in a beautiful way. Yeah, I think that's probably what's right at the very heart of it. And like I say in the book, though, I don't open up about all that stuff in the book, but I do say beauty is not something that's talked about on courses to be a coach. Oh, we're really missing something, I think. Because there's something, yeah, something quite kind of wonder filled. You know what I mean? When you see someone surprising themselves with what they can do, or you go home from having coached a session or from a conversation with someone, and you're thinking, where did that come from? Why did I think of that idea in that moment? How amazing. It's very humbling. It's not like oh, aren't I great? Quite the opposite. Yeah.
And that wonder filled is going to be my new word for wonderful, I think. Because the wonderful, it's interesting because that is a sense of fullness as well, wonderful. But wonder filled gives it a sense of agency somehow, that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can go out and fill myself with wonder. And one of my favorite words is wow.
Yeah, mine too, actually. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's such a simple word, but I think it can
Yeah.
conjure up so much. And if you're bringing wow into your day, then you're filling it with wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't talk a whole lot about the sports. We've talked about sports, certainly, Mike, but most people listening may not be athletes or sports coaches or whatever. That doesn't matter because people are people. And I think all of this helps us to understand ourselves better. And
Hmm.
high performance exists both in the coaching world and in the leadership world or working world, whatever world we look at.
Hmm.
But you mentioned calm and composed a few times. And I remember one of my first conversations with Alison Jones was in my book. I wanted to help people connect to that feeling of being calm and composed
Yeah.
without being horizontal. Because I think there's this sense that calm and composed means lying down.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it's about a sense of spaciousness or expansiveness. And looking at the world around us now, where else is this necessary outside of sports?
Hmm.
Last question, Mike.
Again, it's back to the presumptuous theme, I think. Yeah, I don't feel quite in the place to kind of tell people in different areas of work or profession or whatever, oh, this is what you must do. I think there's like kind of core themes that I found through the process of writing. I've come to kind of try and understand better. One is about kindness, being kind to ourselves and kind to others, in the sense of compassion, I think, just a readiness to try and understand where I am, why am I feeling this way, and about the person in front of me. I think there's also something about openness to the uncertainty, openness to admitting I don't have all the answers. We're all trying to find our way here.
Or feel our way.
Feel our way. Yeah, yeah. And I think openness, it's the kind of bigger themes in a way to explore there. But perhaps this is straying into other areas where I'm not qualified to talk, but you see so much of a kind of narrowing down of people's worlds, the kind of them and us mentality, where actually the sense I get is it's like people are shrinking their world to a small and ever smaller enclave of people like us, or people who know what's right. But my goodness, there's a richness out there. There's a whole world we can discover by allowing ourselves, in part, to have the courage to go with the uncertainty, the not knowing, and just find a way of being more open, sort of recognizing, I don't know what's going on for this person, or I don't know their background, or I don't know why they're doing whatever it is that they're doing that might be really quite triggering for me. So I'll make the effort to find out. Or I'll recognize actually it's not for me, and I'll step back, but without closing down my world and shutting them off, putting them in a box. That was a bit abstract, wasn't it?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I, I think what you say about the shrinking of our world is, COVID hasn't helped that. And
Mm.
also it's the assumptions that we carry about so many things. Dropping those leaves a space for wonder. and awe and all of these things to come through. And then we stop seeing us and them, and we see more of a, we are people, how do we go through the world together? So that's what I got from what you said. Not abstract at all, quite beautiful. So Mike, we're out of time.
Oh no.
And that actually flew. So if people would like to know more about you, read your book, connect with you, what's the best way of doing that, Mike?
I'm really rubbish at social media. But probably the best place, if you're into that stuff, is LinkedIn. And I really like using that to make connections to people, not just an extra thing to click on, but if it leads to conversations and just finding out about the different worlds that people work in, that's super. So I'm genuinely open to being approached, maybe through LinkedIn, or I talk about the website. Yeah, that's the door's open there. And I have a website which is called zigzagconfidence.com. And then there's the book as well. You say Beyond Belief, the Art of Confidence-Centered Coaching. And all good bookshops and pretty much all the online platforms as well, thanks to the publisher. Yeah.
And it is one I highly recommend to anyone who's curious about furthering or deepening some of the things that we touched on today. Mike, thank you so much for that conversation.
It was great for me too. Thanks so much.
What stayed with me from this conversation is the phrase that Mike almost used in passing. Feeling alive as opposed to just kind of living. And throughout this episode, Mike kept bringing us back to something deeper than going through the motions, like performing, giving advice, getting it right. And instead, he talked about attunement, fluency, openness, and the difference between telling someone what you think is wrong and helping them feel what is true for themselves. And that distinction between going through the motions and actually feeling life move through you matters. And there's a curiosity in that, an aliveness, a willingness to notice what's actually happening rather than rushing to label it, fix it. And curiosity is in itself a form of aliveness. It keeps us open, keeps us present, it keeps us from shrinking our world down to only what we already know. And that takes courage. The courage to stay with uncertainty, to resist the fixing reflex, and to meet another person without assuming we already know. We feel our way there too. And it might just be that this is where possibility opens, in that space between people, in calmness and composure, in being willing to feel our way, in allowing beauty, surprise, and even being wonder-filled to have a place in how we coach, or how we lead, or how we live. And maybe that is what feeling alive is. Being truly present to what is actually here. Thank you for listening to Life Beyond the Numbers. If someone popped into your mind while you were listening, maybe a friend or a colleague, send them the episode. Chances are they'll appreciate it too. And if it spoke to you, A few kind words in a review can help others like us find it too.